I'm looking for a real human being. But do you truly see yourself when you look in the mirror? Or do you, deep down, just see an edited version, molded to please others, as if it were another Instagram filter disguised as an identity? That's the first question I want to ask here, because if you truly have the courage to look at yourself without masks, you'll realize that perhaps you've never really seen yourself. And before I continue, I want you to make a pact with me right now. Write the word I in the comments below, mirror, just so I know who's really listening and willing to face this discomfort with me. It seems simple, but this action is a sign that you're not just a lost viewer in another video. You're someone who's truly ready to dive into their own reflection, because the truth is that we spend so much time running away from who we are, trying to fit into molds that weren't made for us, that we end up living a life of lies. Diogenes, over 2,000 years ago, said he was looking for an honest man, but to this day, that search hasn't ended. So let me ask you again, when you look in the mirror, do you see yourself, or just the version the world expects of you? If your answer is uncomfortable, great, because it's precisely this discomfort that will lead us on this journey. With every word of this script, I want to nudge you, make you laugh, make you think, and above all, make you question yourself. So hold on tight, because this opening isn't just an introduction, it's an invitation for you to look in the mirror, without fear, without filters, without editing. And if you've made it this far, write mirror in the comments right now, because I want to know who the truly brave souls are who will make it through this reflection. Don't put it off, right now, because if you don't act in the present, you'll continue to be held hostage by your invented version of yourself. This is the moment. This is the turning point. And if you stick with me, I promise you'll discover not only what it means to truly look at yourself, but also what it means to truly live. The mirror you have in your bathroom, bedroom, or even in your bag only shows the contours of your face, the color of your eyes, the shape of your hair, and perhaps even some flaws you try to disguise with makeup, a clean shave, or even a filter on your phone camera. But this ordinary mirror doesn't reveal the invisible layers you carry every day. It doesn't reflect the masks you put on to fit into social groups. It doesn't reveal the vanities you nurture to feel accepted, much less expose the lies you tell yourself to avoid facing the truth. Because deep down, everyone has lied to themselves at some point. It's okay when it wasn't. I can stop whenever I want, when they knew they had no control. This doesn't affect me, when deep down, it was hurting more than they'd like to admit. The physical mirror doesn't reveal this. It only reveals the packaging. But what about the essence? Who shows it to you? Who reveals the truth of who you really are, what you feel, what you hide even from yourself? That's why I say, the biggest mistake is to think you know yourself just by looking at your reflection in a glass. And that's where the provocation comes in. When you look in the mirror, do you see who you are? Or just who you'd like others to see? Write the word in the comments, mask, just so I know you've already noticed this brutal difference between appearance and essence. This simple word can be the first step towards you starting to face head-on the illusions you carry without realizing it. Now think about it. How many times have you adjusted your hair, your clothes, or even your posture, not because you wanted to, but because you thought about what others would think? This is the mirror of illusion at work. It creates a social reflection, an edited reflection, a theatrical reflection. The world has become a stage, and everyone plays a role, but the problem is that most forget they're acting. They live so long behind masks that they begin to believe the mask is their true face. Diogenes, if he were alive today, would probably walk the streets with a flashlight, not in search of people, but in search of someone who had the courage to say, I don't need a filter, I don't need applause, I am who I am, even if it hurts. But let's face it, that's rare. And it's precisely this lack of authenticity that generates So much anxiety, comparison, and even existential emptiness. Because the further you distance yourself from who you really are, the harder it becomes to maintain the character. The mirror you look at every day doesn't betray this, but your mind does, your soul does, your body does when you're tired of pretending. And so I ask you again, are you living as the protagonist of your own story, or just an extra in the script others have written for you? If this question provokes you, great, because it means you still have time to turn things around. And if you're getting this provocation, comment on the word now. Mask. Because I want to see who here has already realized that the greatest enemy of authenticity is not the judgment of others, but the illusion you create of yourself. And this is where the true journey begins, realizing that the mirror of illusion isn't in front of you, but inside your head. It's where you project versions of yourself to endure rejection, to gain approval, or simply to survive. But every time you choose to live within this illusion, you trade authenticity for appearance, essence for performance, freedom for prison. I know it hurts to admit it, but the first step to change is precisely acknowledging this pain. Because as long as you insist on looking at the mirror only as an object that reflects your physical image, you will remain trapped in a narrative that isn't yours. Now, if you have the courage to see that true vision begins when you face your own lies, then the mirror ceases to be a prison and becomes a key to liberation. What you see today may be beautiful to others, but what you feel when you lie alone in the silence of the night is the true measure of who you are. And I want to leave you with this reflection. Are you ready to face the discomfort of shedding your illusions? Are you willing to throw away the mask and finally breathe as your true self? If so, please comment. Mask now, because this is the symbol that you understood the message and are willing to walk with me in this search for something rare, a true human being. Diogenes lived as few would have the courage to live. He didn't seek palaces. He didn't want expensive clothes. He didn't need titles or pats on the back to feel like a person. His home was a barrel, his wealth was freedom, and his greatest luxury was not depending on external approval to exist. For him, the simple life wasn't poverty, but power. Because when you owe nothing to anyone, when you don't need to uphold an image that isn't yours, you finally discover your inner truth. Imagine living without needing to show the world that you're doing well, without the obligation to flaunt your achievements, without the burden of competing with others to prove your worth. This was Diogenes' philosophy, living without chains, without illusions, without the desperate need for validation. Now think with me, don't you feel a pang of envy for this kind of freedom deep down? Because today, even if you don't live in a barrel, you might be trapped in another kind of invisible prison, the prison of appearances. Diogenes' barrel was his fortress of independence, but our generation has built glass walls on social media, where every like is a currency of self-esteem, and every comment becomes fuel to continue sustaining a character. The big question is, how long will you trade your inner peace for digital applause that disappears in seconds? If this question already bothers you, comment below, true, because I want to know who is willing to admit that they are tired of living trying to please others. Look at social media and tell me if it doesn't feel like a distorted mirror. There, no one shows loneliness, doubt, fear, or insecurity. What's shown is an edited, filtered life, carefully constructed to appear perfect. But real life has no background soundtrack, no inspiring captions for every scene, and certainly no filter that makes everything more beautiful. Real life is raw, imperfect, full of contradictions, and that's precisely where inner truth resides. But, as Diogenes said, modern man prefers to live eating banquets of illusion rather than tasting the simple bread of authenticity. And when you allow yourself to be imprisoned by this distorted mirror of social media, what happens? You start living to show off rather than to feel. You start thinking more about how this will look than how good this will do me. And this inversion silent and subtle, erodes your essence until you no longer know who you are without the validation of others. And that's why I tell you, if today you look in the mirror or at your cell phone screen and feel like you've lost touch with your own truth, maybe it's time to take a step back and ask, what do I really want? If this question makes sense to you, comment true, because this is the sign that you already understand that authenticity is not about pleasing, it is about freeing yourself. Now think with me. What's the point of accumulating followers, likes, and compliments if every time the screen goes dark, you still feel empty? This is the difference between living for appearances and truly living. Diogenes showed us that true wealth lies in not needing anything to be someone, and this lesson has never been more relevant. The search for inner truth doesn't require you to abandon everything and go live in a barrel, but it does ask that you stop begging for approval and start listening to yourself. Because in the end, the only applause that matters is that of your own conscience, the peaceful silence of someone who lays their head on the pillow knowing they're not playing a role. And perhaps this is the greatest challenge of our time. Unlearning to live for the public and relearning to live for yourself. The mirror of illusion may deceive the eyes, but the soul always knows when it's being betrayed. So I ask you, will you continue trapped in this theater of vanity, or will you have the courage to face your inner truth? If you're tired of living trying to please others, comment now. True, because this simple gesture can be the beginning of your liberation. The truth hurts. This is the phrase most people avoid admitting, because it really does. It hurts to realize you're not as strong as you said, that you're not as free as you thought, that many of the choices you made were made to please others and not yourself. It hurts to realize that much of your life was built on external expectations and internal illusions. But at the same time, this pain is the key to liberation. Diogenes already said in his time, it's easier to live in illusion, but those who have courage face the truth unfiltered. And herein lies the conflict for all of us, to live comfortably within a lie or to face the discomfort necessary to live in freedom. And don't think this is a thing of the past. Today, the lie that most enslaves is not the one others tell, but the one you repeat to yourself daily when you say, everything is fine, when it clearly isn't. The physical mirror doesn't show this, but your soul feels it. And here's the challenge I want to leave you with now. If you had the courage to look at yourself raw, without masks, without excuses, without filters, what do you think you would see? Write one word that sums it up in the comments, because that answer could be the spark that ignites your transformation. But let's be honest, it's tempting to choose not to see. It's tempting to keep scrolling through social media feeds, laughing at short videos, distracting yourself with fast-paced news, busying yourself with endless tasks, just to avoid facing the silence screaming inside you. Because in the silence, the truth emerges. And it's not always pretty. Seeing the truth requires courage, because it reveals fragility, insecurity, fear, and even regret. That's why many prefer to live numb to illusion, because it's comfortable, cozy, like a soft bed that prevents you from leaving to fight your own battle. But this same illusion, which seems like protection, gradually turns into a prison. And the more you run from the truth, the heavier it becomes to carry the invisible chains that lies place on you. Diogenes, with his simple life, already showed that there is nothing more liberating than living without having to hide who you are. The truth may expose you, it may even hurt you, but it will never imprison you. A lie, on the other hand, is always a gilded cage on the outside. It appears beautiful, but on the inside it suffocates you. So I ask you, how long will you accept living locked in illusions just to avoid dealing with the pain of the truth? Think about it and write in the comments a word that represents what you would see if you had the courage to truly face yourself. Now imagine what your life would be like if you chose to see instead of pretend. Yes, at first, it would be uncomfortable, almost unbearable even. You would have to face your flaws, recognize your masks, and admit your misguided choices. But after this initial pain, a feeling of lightness would come that only those who have freed themselves know. Because when you stop wasting energy sustaining a lie, you begin to have the energy to build a true life. When you accept your vulnerability, you discover that it is, in fact, your greatest strength, because no one can manipulate someone who is unafraid to show themselves as they are. This is the path of authenticity, the path that separates those who live for others from those who live for themselves. And perhaps this is your crossroads today, to continue in the illusory comfort or to take the leap into the freedom of truth. The choice has always been yours. But remember what Diogenes said: "It is easier to live in illusion, but those who have courage face the truth without filters." So tell me, if you had that courage, what would be the first word that would come to mind when you looked at yourself without masks? Write in the comments right now, because this gesture could be the beginning of your liberation. Imagine Diogenes appearing before you, that philosopher who wasn't afraid to shock, who lived in a barrel to prove he needed nothing but his own conscience. He holds something simple, seemingly ordinary, a mirror. But it's not just any mirror, it's the mirror of truth. He looks into your eyes and says, "This mirror doesn't show the face, it shows the essence, and what it shows can frighten, but it can also liberate." Now, take a deep breath and think, if you had the courage to look at yourself in this mirror, what would it reveal? Would you see the person you always wanted to be, or would you discover the contradictions and lies you tried to hide from yourself? Diogenes' mirror is unforgiving. It doesn't care about vanity, status, or appearance. It shows you what you try most to avoid, your raw truth. But that's exactly what can open the doors to transformation. So I want you to tell me here in the comments, without beating around the bush, would you be willing to look at yourself in this mirror without fear of what you'll find? If so, comment the word essence, because this is the pact that differentiates those who just watch this video from those who really choose to look at themselves. This Diogenes mirror is the opposite of the social media you know. While Instagram, TikTok, and filter-filled feeds return a constructed, made-up, performative image, this mirror leaves no room for acting. It rips away the masks with an almost uncomfortable yet necessary brutality. Because there comes a time in life when you must decide, continue living as a character or embrace the protagonist of your story. The mirror of truth isn't concerned with whether others will applaud or judge you, because it doesn't show what you sell to the world. It shows what you truly are when no one is looking. And honestly, this is the vision that is both the most frightening and the most liberating. Because if you have the courage to face yourself raw, you gain power over your own life. You stop being held hostage by others' gaze and become master of your own path. This is the point at which discomfort becomes strength, vulnerability becomes courage, and shame becomes learning. So answer me honestly, would you have the courage to look at yourself in this mirror that reveals your essence? If you would, prove it right now by commenting essence, because this word is the sign of someone who does not run away from their own truth. Now, let me tell you something important. This Diogenes mirror doesn't exist outside, it exists within you. It appears in the moments when you fall silent in the middle of the night and feel the weight of your choices. It appears when you look at yourself in the silence and realize you could be living much more than you are. It appears when you stop comparing yourself to others and decide to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. This is the true mirror conscience. That internal reflection that doesn't lie, that doesn't manipulate, that doesn't filter. And the more you run away from it, the further you become from living an authentic life. But the more you face it, the lighter the journey becomes, because you finally understand that you no longer need to pretend. This is what Diogenes was trying to teach with his radical life. It's not about living in a barrel, it's about living free from everything that imprisons you. And for you, what imprisons you today? Pride, fear, appearance, approval? If you would really be willing to look in this mirror and deal with it, comment essence down here, because this is the silent cry of those who decided to leave the illusion behind and choose the freedom to be who they really are. The search for truth may begin alone, but it doesn't have to end that way. Diogenes walked alone through the streets of Athens with his lantern, searching for a genuine human being. But if he were here today, he might hold that same lantern pointed at the screen, illuminating the comments of each person who chooses to expose themselves and share a fragment of their essence. Because truth, however personal, gains strength when shared. When you write a word, when you leave a piece of what you feel there, you're not just recording an opinion. You're creating an invisible bridge with others who also carry similar doubts, fears, and quests. This is where reflection ceases to be merely an individual exercise and becomes something collective, powerful, capable of showing that no one is truly alone on this journey. And I want to invite you to experience this now. Look within, choose a word that represents what you feel upon hearing all this, and post it in the comments. It may seem small, but this gesture is symbolic. It's like saying, I exist, I feel, I am on this path. And when someone reads your words, they might recognize themselves in them and feel the same comfort you seek. That's why I say commenting here isn't just about interacting with the video, it's about participating in a collective mirror. Now imagine this space as a large circle around Diogenes' barrel. Instead of being isolated in our own reflections, we are together, looking at each other more sincerely than we perhaps do in everyday life. Because modern society, despite being hyper-connected, is full of lonely people, afraid to truly show themselves. Social media has become showcases, but they rarely become confessionals, and that's why this space can be different. When you comment, it's not just the algorithm that notices, it's other people who also carry their own internal struggles and can identify with you. It's as if each comment is a shard of mirror that, when assembled, forms a much more honest, collective reflection. And it doesn't matter if your word is fear, courage, doubt, or hope. What matters is that it comes from your essence, and that's already revolutionary in a world of appearances. So, here's what you do. Before continuing, drop down here in the comments and leave your word. And it doesn't stop there. Check out what others have written. Interact, respond, exchange ideas. That's the invitation. Because this experience is only powerful when you understand that truth can be shared, and that, as it resonates, it multiplies. And this is where something bigger than just a video is born. It's at this moment that individual reflection transforms into community, into a movement of authenticity. Because when you realize you're not the only one feeling fear, insecurity, or even hope, you understand that truth isn't a burden to be carried alone, but a force that can be shared. If Diogenes were among us now, he might smile to see that instead of walking alone with his lantern, there's a multitude of people willing to light small lights together, creating a collective fire that illuminates much further. This is the power of shared reflection, transforming vulnerability into connection, doubt into learning, and loneliness into belonging. So don't miss it. Check out the comments, read, respond, exchange ideas. This is more than a video. It can be a collective mirror, where each person brings a reflection that together reveals a much truer portrait of the human condition. If you understand the value of this, comment on the word right now, essence, because this is the sign that you not only accepted to look at yourself, but also accepted to be part of something bigger, a shared search for the truth that liberates. We've reached the end of this journey, and if you've followed along this far, you've already realized that we're not just talking about mirrors, masks, or illusions. We're talking about courage, about authenticity, about the difficult but liberating choice of facing oneself without filters. Diogenes, with his simple life and sharp provocations, reminds us that there is no greater courage than facing one's own reflection. Not the reflection in glass, but the reflection of consciousness. Because that's where the truth resides, and that's where your freedom also resides. You can continue living trapped in illusions, wearing masks to please others, or you can finally choose to look yourself in the eye and from there rebuild your life truthfully. And if this video was your mirror, if at any point in these words you felt poked, challenged, or even uncomfortable, that's a sign that the mirror has fulfilled its purpose. Now I want you to turn this reflection into action. Like it, share this video with someone who needs this mirror too, and most importantly, leave a comment with the word freedom. Because when you comment, you're not just saying something to me, you're saying it to yourself. It's like a public pact, a commitment to your own essence. Writing freedom is declaring that you not only watched, but that you had the courage to see yourself. And more than that, by writing this word, you join a community of people who are also tired of living by appearances and have decided to seek something more authentic. Look at the comments. See the voices that echo the same search as yours. Respond, interact. Because this space is not just an isolated video, it is a collective mirror where each individual reflection adds to the other and creates a movement of authenticity. And remember, Diogenes walked alone, but you don't have to. You can walk with everyone here, each leaving their mark, each embracing their own truth. So don't put it off. If this content touched you in any way, if it served as a call to look at yourself, do 3 things right now. Like, share, and comment. Freedom. This word will mark you as someone who chose courage over illusion, truth over mask, essence over appearance. Because in the end, there is no greater achievement than this: freeing yourself from everything that imprisons you and finally living as yourself.